Welcome to another episode of the Decision Hour. I'm Adam, and with me as always, Patty.
Adam.
What's up?
Every time I'm like, Adam.
I know. I wonder if people are starting to like differentiate the. Is that the right word? Did I say that right? Differentiate. Anyway.
Yeah.
Like the they have the same intro, and it's almost like the same monotone every time. But then we jump into some shenanigan. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and then you can tell. Like sometimes I'm like, hey Adam, that's like a cruddy day, and then I'm like, Adam, that's like an awesome day.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We have it's good. Things are going great, as always, right?
Always.
Cough. We got a pretty awesome show lined up for our listeners today.
Yes, we do. I'm really excited about it.
I'm definitely excited. So without further ado, I want to bring on today's guest. He is the founder of Operation Valor. Great guy. I was just recently introduced to him. He sent me an email. Actually, had the chance to talk to him finally over the phone. Been following him and have known about him and his organization for quite a while. So anyway, without further ado, I want to bring him on right now, Mr. Sean Valigura. Sean, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Adam. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come on and talk with us and our listeners today.
Oh, of course. Thanks for having me.
So listen, let's dive right into this. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Okay. I am a U.S. Navy veteran. Grew up the son of a career Air Force officer. Spent quite a few years in the Navy. Gulf War I vet on board the USS John F. Kennedy as a bosun's mate. Got out and started working in the tech industry. I've worked for Dell, AMD, a few other tech companies. Been in that industry for about 20 years. And I guess just about 5.5 years ago, I started Operation Valor very unexpectedly. I reconnected in late 2013 with an old friend of mine who I hadn't talked to in about, I guess it was about 15 years that we had been out of touch. And we reconnected on a miscellaneous Facebook group of all places. And we talked that evening and, just kind of generally caught up. How's your family? Oh, hi. Wow, you've got kids now. That's great. That kind of conversation. And we exchanged friend requests, of course. And about every 2 or 3 weeks after that, in my Facebook feed, I would see these photos from him at events that I learned were called obstacle course races, or OCRs.
Okay.
Now, me being a military guy and having done my fair share of obstacle courses in my life, I reached out to him and said, hey, Paul, tell me more about this. Looks pretty cool. And he said, oh, well, those are photos from a Spartan race that I did up in Killington, Vermont a few weeks ago. And we talked that night, I guess, for about an hour and a half, and he could tell I was interested. So at the end of the conversation, he said, well, listen, there's a Spartan race coming up in Austin, where I live. How about if I come down? He lives in Dallas. How about if I come down and we'll do it together in May? And I said, great. So at the time, I was a competitive power lifter. So I put down the big heavyweights for a while and started doing a little bit more cardio. And we went out there in the middle of May in Burnet, Texas, and did this race. I will admit that I was pretty arrogant going into this event. I've been a pretty decent athlete my whole life, played a lot of sports growing up and whatnot. And having, had some experience, some decent experience in the military doing obstacle courses, I thought it was going to be an easy day. And man, was I wrong. I got my butt kicked all day long. It was brutal. It was humbling. Being a 290, 300 pound power lifter does not lend itself to being a very efficient runner. So the course was about 9.5 miles that day. And it took me, if I remember right, 7 hours and 19 minutes to finish that course.
Wow.
And when I got done, I had 3 broken bones in my right foot, 1 broken bone in my left foot. a torn left groin, and a high ankle sprain on my right foot.
And you paid for that.
I was done. I'm saying I'm never going to do this again. But when I started to reflect on the day and everything that happened, it started to sink in. Our wave left off at 9 o'clock, and then they would send off waves of about 300 people roughly every 15 minutes after that. So eventually, me being a big fat slow guy, the 9:15 wave eventually caught up with us, maybe 25 minutes after we left. And the first people who come, bounding by me like a herd of stampeding antelope, a lot of them, maybe even as many as half of them, would say something encouraging to me specifically. Hey, man, stay strong, or hey, big guy, you're doing great, stuff like that. Well, coming from an upbringing of lots and lots of team sports, which are zero-sum games, I actually thought these people were taunting me. I sincerely thought that they were just being mean, and it started to make me mad. But I didn't say anything. But then the 9:30 wave caught up to us another 25, 30 minutes later. And the same thing happened. And I started actually cussing at these people as they were coming by and shouting obscenities at them. And I got a lot of funny looks. And then, another hour goes by and the 9:45 wave catches up and the same thing happens. Well, over the course of that 7 hours and 19 minutes I was on the course, this happened all day. It didn't stop. And eventually, even a rock for brains bosun's mate like me figures out that, maybe something's going on here. And the thing I didn't expect was that there's an instantaneous camaraderie between complete strangers out on this course that's forged in certainly the shared misery, the exertion of that event that you're going through together.
Right.
And it occurred to me after I crossed the finish line and I'm sitting there with a towel over my head, crowbarring my shoes off my feet, that I hadn't felt that since I was on active duty in the Navy. It really was that same feeling, that same sense that I had, with the people that I served with, and I didn't even realize that I was missing it really up until that moment.
Right.
So when I got home, I realized right then and there that these were people that I wanted to do more things with. This was my tribe. And I wanted to go and do more events with these people. So when I got home, I went online and looked for where the next event was going to be. And come to find out, it was in late October in Dallas, Texas. Now, one thing you need to know about these events is that they're never actually located in the cities where they're advertised.
Right.
So the Austin race wasn't actually in Austin. It was 45 minutes north of here in a small town called Burnet, Texas.
Yep. Well,
likewise, the Dallas race isn't in Dallas. It's an hour and a half southwest of there in a small town by the name of Glen Rose, Texas. Now, in 2014, Glen Rose was pretty infamous. And me being a Navy guy, it set off alarm bells in my head. So I went online and did a little searching, and come to find out the venue where Spartan Race does their Dallas event is the same exact property where Navy SEAL Chris Kyle and his best friend Chad Littlefield were shot and killed in February of 2013.
Right.
Apparently, I was the first person in the OCR community to connect all the dots. So I reached out to my racing team. I'm actually the captain of them now, but I wasn't back in 2014, the Lone Star Spartans, and said, listen, hey, guys, did you know about this? And, of course, they didn't. And they had a quick little emergency meeting and came back to me about 30 minutes later and said, hey, we know you're a Navy guy, and we know you got friends in that community. Would you mind putting together something to honor and pay tribute to Chris and Chad? As a veteran, that's just something you don't say no to.
Right.
Right. So that first year, I did a really crappy T-shirt design, and I know it was crappy because I'm the one who did it, and I have zero artistic talent. It was terrible, and I've tried to scrub the internet of all evidence that I ever did that. But we printed up 150 of those shirts, and I literally sold them out of the back of my car at the event. And if I remember right, we sold 146 of them, and the 4 that were left over, I sent to Chris Kyle's younger brother, Jeff, in Waco. And that was it. We pretty much washed our hands and patted each other on the back and said, that we did our good deed for the day. We raised about $1,840 something, and Lone Star Spartans kicked in enough to round it off to an even $2,000. And I wrote 2 $1,000 checks that first year. One of them went to the Chris Kyle Memorial Fund, which supported Chris's widow and their children directly. And the other one went to Guardian for Heroes, which is the foundation that Chris himself started when he got out of the teams. And like I said, we were done. We thought we had done a little bit of good in the world, and we kind of moved on. Well, about 2.5 weeks later, I come home from work one day, and my Facebook feed had just absolutely exploded. And I had about, if I remember, it was about 270, 280 private messages waiting for me.
Oh, jeez.
Apparently what had happened is Jeff Kyle had gotten those shirts and thrown one on and had his wife take a couple photos, posted it up on Facebook, and he tagged me on it. And everybody on the planet apparently suddenly wanted one of these shirts. So it was kind of in that moment where,
Sean, wait a minute.
This
is the shirt that you're trying to be rid of, the artwork.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, just making sure.
This is the one that I'm trying to hide from.
This is
the rest
important
of the world
for us to know that's what it was. So okay, got it.
Yeah. But, the one person that was helping me back then, we kind of looked at each other and said, maybe we've tapped into something here, and maybe we can use this as a vehicle to help veterans. So I guess really it was that moment where Operation Valor was born. And we sat down and said, well, okay, we've got a vehicle here. What do we want to do? And when we went and started doing some research, we found that back in 2014, there were over 46,000 nonprofit organizations dedicated to veteran issues. 46,000. It doesn't take a big leap of logic to think that probably every good idea that I can come up with, 100 or 200 people have already come up with that idea, and probably 3 to 5 of them are doing an exceptionally good job. So we thought perhaps that maybe a direct support type of role wasn't what we needed to do and how we could best serve the community. The idea that kind of popped in our heads was, what if we can provide information to the public, even to the veteran community, on which of these organizations are doing an exceptionally good job, not just in terms of how they handle their money, but also in terms of the services and programs that they provide to the veteran community.
Right.
So it became our mission to each year go out and vet a certain number of these organizations to become our beneficiaries for the year. Normally that's between 5, 6, 7 501c3 charities who specifically work in the veteran space, and we put on events to raise money and awareness for those charities. This year, our beneficiaries are in no particular order. The Adaptive Training Foundation in Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
The Lieutenant Mike Murphy Navy SEAL Museum in upstate New York. The Lone Survivor Foundation out of Houston, Texas. The Vetted Foundation here in Austin. The Navy SEAL Family Foundation out in Coronado, California. Mm-hmm. And Operation Enduring Warrior based in Virginia.
Yep.
And at the end of the year, we take all of the net funds that we raise and we split it up between those organizations to help support them in their mission, to help support paying for the various services that they provide to the veteran community.
I love it. And that's quite a few. I'm trying to pick one question to ask here. There's so many. Is it hard to put together different events for each of these organizations? How do you guys decide which events you're going to do? And I'm assuming each event goes towards that specific organization. So if I look at it, 4 or 5, there's 6 of them for this year. Does that mean you're holding 6 different events for this year that each one goes?
And
how
actually,
does that work
the way
out?
that we work it is we pool all the money from all the events, and then we split it between the beneficiaries.
Nice.
The way that we go about creating these events largely is rooted in recent military historical events. So we obviously started with the event out in Glen Rose at the end of October for Chris and Chad. And that event will always be there. We've since added some additional events. The first one being at the end of June, we do an event to remember the 19 guys who were killed on Operation Red Wings. Mm-hmm. If you've seen the movie Lone Survivor or read the book by Marcus Luttrell of the same name, if you know his story, that's an event specifically for the Lone Survivor Foundation. We do another event coming up here the first week of August for the 31 special operators who were killed in a similar incident where a Chinook helicopter was shot down by an RPG, Extortion 17, on August 6th. We do an event for them as well to remember them. A lot of people have never heard of that event. They've not heard of Extortion 17. There's no movie. There have been a few books. Ed Derrick, a good friend of mine, he wrote a really outstanding biography of everything that transpired there a couple years ago that I recommend. But it didn't. There wasn't a movie. There wasn't a whole lot of media behind it, so it's largely gone unnoticed by the public, especially now that it's 8 years after the fact. And then the first weekend of April, this year it happened to be on April 1st, we do our celebrity charity golf tournament up in Arlington, Texas. And that's become a really fantastic event as well.
Nice. You guys got quite a few things that go on. First off, let me say this real quick, folks. If you're listening to the show right now, that means you're already online. Open up another browser and go to opvalor.org. That's OPVALOR.org. And check out the website. They have a donate button if you'd like to make a donation. That'd be greatly appreciated. Make sure you check it out. You have something here on the website about become a partner. What exactly is that for those that listeners out there that either have a business or would like to become a partner of Operation Valor?
Right. Part of what I've discovered over the years is that there's a segment of the population that's incredibly passionate about helping veterans and helping the community. There's lots of different aspects to what veterans need and where they need help, whether it be, PTS, whether it be homelessness, whether it be suicide prevention. But a big part of the confusion, especially in the civilian sector, is they don't know who to support. They don't know, there have been, unfortunately, in recent years, some stories out in the national press about some organizations that, weren't doing the right things with their finances. So there's a little bit of hesitation. So our mission to kind of vet those organizations and tell people we have independently verified these organizations, and we put our name on the line to tell you that these organizations are doing the right thing. So we started this partner program for individuals for sure, but also businesses to link up with us, because Obviously, I can't reach out to every single person and every single business every year. And, as our website or as our name gets in front of other people, they may be interested and they may like our mission. And this is a way for them to reach out to us and say, hey, we like what you're doing. We want to support you guys. What can we do? So it establishes an avenue of communication directly between us and the person or their organization.
Love it. Love it. Sean, we're getting close to time here. I want to, again, folks, if you're listening, open up another browser, go to opvalor.org. I want to make sure, Sean, I ask you this question. It's a question that we ask all of our guests that we have on the show. Name a time in your life where your feet were on the line and you had to make that decision. Now, we know we make decisions every day, but pick a time in your life where you had to make that decision. What was the decision? And explain what the atmosphere was like for you at that time.
Sure. I'll actually tell you a quick little story that I don't tell a whole lot of people. When I first started my journey in the military, I actually started out in the Marine Corps. I was depped in and had signed all the paperwork and gone to MEPS and was just waiting on my ship date. And I was coming out of Montgomery, Alabama, which was also the location for the Regional Depth Center. And all four of the branch recruiters were in the same building, literally in the same hallway. The Marine recruiter and Air Force recruiter were on the left-hand side, and the Army and Navy were on the right-hand side. Well, one day I was coming up to see my Marine Corps recruiter, and these Navy guys in their working whites were walking out to lunch. And one of the guys, who had this cheesy mustache, stopped and said, "Hey, man, what are you doing?" And I, said, "Hey, I'm going to go see my recruiter." And it started this conversation. And he said, "Well, why don't you stop by after that and let's talk? There might be, some things that we have to offer that you may not have considered." And at first, I was slightly amused, but didn't seriously consider it. But after I got done talking to my Marine Corps recruiter, I had some time, so I stopped by, and he sat down and he took a look at my ASVAB scores and whatnot. And he said, "You know what? You really need to be in our nuclear propulsion program. Let me show you about this." And he gave me the 10-minute spiel, and I was hooked immediately and was able to get a transfer from the Marine Corps depth program to the Navy. And I made that decision right then and there, and thought that, this was a better fit for me. That decision, looking back on it, it was one of those life-altering decisions that you don't necessarily fully appreciate in the moment, but it shaped who I am and what I've done since then. I loved my time in the Navy. Would have loved to spent time in the Marine Corps too. Love those guys as well. But my time in the Navy was special, and I'm thankful for the time that I did have.
That's awesome. That's the first time we've had a story or a decision hour like that ever. That's really cool. That's a cool story. We appreciate you sharing that with us and our listeners. Sean, any parting words before we let you go?
I just want to thank everybody for their amazing support over the years. This year has been particularly difficult for me. I recently I just got out of the hospital actually a couple weeks ago, and it's been physically for me, it's been really tough. Emotionally, it's been really tough. So I want to thank everybody who's reached out to me this year and given me some support and sent their prayers. It's meant the world to me. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, Sean. Thank you. And folks, again, reach out, take a look at opvalor.org. That's opvalor.org. Get involved. Either make a donation or find out how you can support and either become a partner or volunteer at one of their events that they have coming up. So, Sean, thank you again.
Thanks, Adam. I appreciate you making time for me.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Thanks. You too.
Great interview, great guy. Operation Valor, make sure you check them out, opvalor.org, opvalor.org. Sean, thanks again for being on the show. That's all the time that we have today, folks. Before we let you go, we got to give a shout out to our network sponsors, Heroes Media Group. Go check them out. Great shows joining every month. New shows joining every month, I should say, and a lot of good content that they're starting to pump out over there. So go check them out at heroesmediagroup.com. That's heroesmediagroup.com. For Patty, I'm Adam. Until next time, you've been listening to The Decision Hour.